Hey everyone, thank you for staying to this part. I like to say, I got the sleepy window. 3 to 4 p.m. is the worst time of the day. So I appreciate you guys all for one staying awake because 3 p.m. is the Tuesday of time. It's too far from anything good. So I'll make a deal with you. You guys promise to stay awake between blinks and I will try my best to not tell you something you already know. So we'll meet in the middle. But first, I want to talk about how Elizabeth convinced me to give this talk because I don't like strat talks, I don't like panels, I don't feel like, if I don't have anything to contribute to the conversation, I'd rather just not. I'd rather like it on LinkedIn when I see it. But it was all about embracing kind of the managerial role. So just to have a sense of the room, how many people are managing someone? Raise your hand if you are. How many people would say that you're enjoying managing someone? You don't gotta raise your hand. We know. It's not everyone's favorite topic. But better yet, how many people feel like they got training to manage the person that they're managing? The few two hands, right? Because that continues to be the story that we understand. So this is the story of embracing the manager role. Like, I was a rock star senior strategist, and then I had to become a strategy director, and that was quite the adjustment for me. And I was very adamant, you will find, about my perspectives on management. Elizabeth will tell you, I would call her and be like, oh no, man, like this is not good. So I really wanted to kind of talk about both sides of that experience. One, for people who are managing and kind of saying, I understand now what my managers were doing. And people on the other side who saying like, my manager never has time for me. What is the problem? Like, why can't I never get a hold of them? And it's not lost on me that I started my advertising career in MAPE. 4As, MAPE, if any MAPers in the house, if you don't know what MAPE is, it's a multicultural advertising internship placement program that places, a bunch of kids who are freshly graduated in agencies all over the nation. I was a part of a Boston cohort, which had 8 people, and I was part of a larger New York cohort that had like 110 people. So in 2016, it was the 8 of us. You see me at the side, I'm holding the bag, I'm so cute, I got the same haircut. And then in 2022, there are only 3 remain in my cohort, right? And when I talk about the 2016 cohort of 110, about only 60 or 70 remain in advertising. Everyone else has gone freelance, they've gone consulting, they've gone brand side, they're entrepreneurs, some went to law school. I don't know why they did that. That's not a good strategy in my opinion. I'm not taking on no debt. But I just wanted to know, so I just started calling people and I said, hey, what's going on? Like, why do you leave? And some people were like, oh, the flexibility, oh, the better pay, oh, this, that, and other. But there was like a sinister truth that came through and everybody was saying kind of what my favorite player in Remember the Titans would say. And if you guys have seen this movie, it's from 2001, but it's like a sports movie. There's a captain and everyone identifies with Julius, which is, I'm supposed to wear myself out for the team. What team? Everybody that I talked to felt that they were asked to perform at this level and asked to expend this and pick up this thing and could you do content management and social and PR? That's 3 jobs. But when it came to managing, no one felt that same level of responsibility. No one felt that same level of accountability. And of all the ways that the 4As and MAPE prepares you for the advertising industry, the one place they let you down is the expectation of what you're encountering when you get a manager. When you're in the 4As, you get a MAPE mentor, and that person is laser focused on making sure that you have the tools that you need, that you're equipped, you talk to them weekly, you get excited. When you graduate and you get that job, there's no manager guaranteed to do that for you. And many who are diverse talent feel like they're kind of left to their own devices to figure it out. It's on them to figure out, how to manage up. Manage up was the magic word, right? Like, you got to manage up to your boss. It's like, I got to manage up to someone who makes more than me? Oh no. That's not right. And so at the same time, if you remember, this is like, again, the summer of 22, the ad industry had come up with their own title for this feeling. They called it the talent shortage. They're like, there's a talent shortage happening in the agency right now. Where are the people? Where are the diverse people? Where are the women? Where are the this? And what I was feeling is that people didn't feel like there was a talent shortage. There was a talent abandonment happening. They didn't feel like they left the industry. They felt like the industry left them. So I took it upon myself. And Elizabeth just said, use your agency branding as an ethos. So I was like, we have our BBH Labs post that I wrote, from Adland to Atlantis, how the agency's sink or swim management culture caused the talent shortage. And I just wrote it. And I was like, I want to honor the experiences of my friend And that sucker flew all over LinkedIn. It's hard to read quotes about yourself because I'm like, I wrote this, but I'm actually proud of it. It's like, look at agency job descriptions. Terms like self-starter, ability to wear multiple hats, and superhero all signal an environment that propose no support. Think about all the conversations we've been having today about consumer and understanding culture and being brave, and understanding data and YouTube Shorts more than TikTok and being brave, and about agency brands and how they matter and bringing that ethos all the way down. But where's the bravery in managing? Where's the bravery in showing up for someone and repeatedly being there for them and kind of saying, like, how can I help bridge the gap? No one was talking about that, not in my industry. And it was interesting, in BBH Labs is written, 25 years old, and every strategist wants to write in BBH Labs. And we did an audit of all the conversations, so like, is branding dead? Is brand strategy dead? Is this, that, and other? Of all the entries ever committed into the BBH Labs, I was the only person to write about the impact of management. I also said this: until agencies implement training and career development programs to grow and nurture their talent, they should plan for others to abandon ship. So don't look around and say, why freelance? I got all the people. I want to get paid more money and not have to deal with a boss that don't care with me too. You know what I'm saying? And if I'm the one who's kind of engaging these conversations, then why wouldn't I be on the client side? Or why wouldn't I start my own business? And hell, if I'm that down bad, I too would sign up for law school. I wouldn't, but you get the point. And that post, again, it traveled, right? Like, and my comments were on fire. People were like, exactly, like, this is what I'm feeling like. I had a bad manager, I this, that, and other. And I wrote this to honor the people who had bad managers, but I also realized that I had the privilege of good managers. Again, when I look back at that 8 that went down to 3, or that 160 that went down to around 60, the difference in my story was that Elizabeth Paul was my manager, that Frederick Songbald was my manager. So I had people who invested in me more than they ignored me, people who sponsored me more than they shrugged me off. And so for me to be in that class of 8 and to be the only director is not because I was the smartest or I worked harder. I was the best dressed, but I wasn't the smartest and I didn't work hardest. And it was a result that other people invested and someone else benefited from that investment and another person invested, and that's why I stayed. And so it was a lot more linear. So I wrote this, article. I was feeling myself. I was typing like my hands were on fire. 6 months later, I got promoted to director. And I had a reckoning. I was like, dang, okay, I did it. I said the thing. But then my very next LinkedIn update was like strategy director. I was directly responsible for managing 2 people. And I had to really confront that experience. It reminded me of one of my other favorite movies. I don't know why this is cropped like this. This is bad work. But it's just like Harvey Dent of The Dark Knight Rises, which is you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become a villain. So I either become the person that who was like, managers suck, or live long enough to know why managers suck, right? So I was like, I gotta pick, right? You know what I'm saying? I'm telling you, I'm not in my villain era. I decided I was gonna do something about it. And here's the hard truth that I didn't know when I wrote the article, when I was like beating all managers and saying, y'all suck, y'all leaving us for dead. I was so proud. But here's the truth, is that when I'm a senior strategist, most senior strategists are middle manager, you're only responsible for delivery. And baby, I'm a deliverer. What? Client whisperer, mad kid presenter, insight gold mine. You put me in a meeting, I'm gonna show up. Master deliverer. Being a director requires you to develop. So that's like going, if you're first chair violin, you know your part, you know how to perform. Being a strategy director was being a composer. It wasn't enough for me to just know my part. I had to know, when did everybody else come into the process? I got invited to a meeting the other day called Scope. And I was like, Scope, I don't know what that is. And it's about managing the project. It's about RFPs, breaking those things down. And so you have to deliver at the high level, but now you're in part of developing, bringing other people around. Now you got to meet with leadership. Now you got people to develop. And no one tells you how to do that because, again, to the 2 people who raised their hand, outside of those 2 people, none of us got training. And then, on top of more responsibility, you got less time to do it, right? So managers who raise your hand, is that true? You have less time to do, and more is expected of you. So again, wearing yourself out as a team, what team? And so it was like, oh, That's why my manager canceled my one-on-one. She's in 5 meetings that she has to be in, and my meeting is a meeting she doesn't have to be in, so she canceled it. And it was like, it was never personal. This like feeling of abandonment was never personal, but if we're not mindful, we fall into that same cycle. And I'd like to say that like bad management is both created and inherited. Most of us didn't make it here because we had great managers. We thrived despite having them. And so this is what happens. You have person A, the manager is too busy to train person B. Person B eventually learns how to figure it out without themselves. They get promoted. And then they do the same thing to person C. So you're continuing that cycle. Like, you don't have much resources, you get to the next level, you're not really questioned for getting to the next level, you give that same basic training, and you hope that like everyone makes it. But everybody doesn't make it, right? Like you have people who know how to swim who are drowning, and like I say, Michael Phelps would probably fail the National Guard test, not because he's a good swimmer, but because he couldn't thrive in that environment. He wasn't trained to thrive in that environment. So that's what's happening to a lot of the people, right? Like, we're throwing them overboard. But I'm here to tell you good news is on the way. Managing doesn't have to be the worst part of your day. In fact, it can be the best part of your day. And the thing that I learned that helped me understand how to be a better manager, which I will be a manager for 1 year today, that deserves claps. And what I love about this process so far is that most managers, if we're being really, really, really honest with ourselves, we're not actually maximizing our meeting time. Let me show you. Let's role play. You jump in, you had a 30-minute meeting, you jumped onto this meeting 7 minutes late, you apologize for 2 minutes about being late, then you, pleasantry, so how's your day, how's your weekend? And that takes up a bunch of time. Then you finally get into the project, and it's like, do you need any help? What's the update? You do maybe 2 or 3 general, vague, like, push it further, needs to be stronger. I gotta go to another meeting, you know what I'm saying? Like, and that's it. And then the only time you really sit and think about that experience is when you gotta sit down and write the performance review, right? Like, you're just like, what did this person do and how did I help them? And you're just like, you reach for recency, which is terrible, right? Like, how did you do on the last thing? I'll write about that. If you did bad, I'm writing about it. But I wanna tell you that there's 5 different ways we can maximize our meeting time. And the first one is, this is my favorite one. It's about create a manual to manage the expectations. We talk so much about all the ways we can talk about our consumer, all the ways we can talk to our client, and we spend 0 of those ways talking about workplace communication. What's the best way you like to work? My team knows 4 to 2 p.m. is the best time to reach me. If I'm responding to emails at that time, my brain is sharp. You put a meeting in this window, 3:30 to 4:30, babe, sorry. You're not gonna have my best brain. But I also know the best about them, like, what's the best way to deliver feedback to you? Are you a morning person or a night owl? When I'm overwhelmed, I tend to what? My juniors would say, hide, right? Like I can never find them. I don't know what meeting room they're in. They're not answering the Slack. But I know that about them. So I'll say, hey, I haven't heard from you in a couple of days. If you have too much on your plate, let me know so I can take it back. All of a sudden, poof, they're purged. But that's about creating a manual, right? Like, so much of our meeting time is wasted because we assume that people want to talk to us in the way that we like to receive information. It's not true. So while 1 is the most important, 2 is the most fun. Shake it up, please. Use your meeting time to move. One of the reasons my one-on-one time is so impactful is it's one of the only meetings where I take as a walking meeting. I take as a snack time meeting. I take as a phone call meeting. I take it as a Zoom off meeting, right? So now the thing that I was like, oh, okay, I just had 5 meetings, let me go today. I'm like, girl, let's go. We go to Starbucks. And like, we're talking, we're connecting. Like, my experiences about that one-on-one time is so enriched. It's so unique. It's so dynamic. Now it's like, oh, wow, like I'm excited to move my body. I'm excited to stretch. I'm excited to hop on the phone with you and talk. And so like, that's one way, just changing the nature in which you approach the meeting. The third one, this one is also fun. Unbore your week. Replace the how was your day question with the what is happening in the world that I should be paying attention to. It's a really good prompt for someone who's your direct report, because trust me, there's a lot going on, that you're in a lot of boring meetings that you'll never know a lot about, and a lot of time that they have idle that they would love to share with you about something that they don't think you know. Trust me, I've heard Travis Scott and Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce and Deion Sanders and girl math and girl dinner and boy math and the Roman Empire somehow. But it's like, that's one question to ask, and sometimes I ask the other question, which is like, what is everyone talking about that I should just tune out? And it'd be the same, the girl dinner, girl math, all those things. But what it does is, it brings a prompt into the conversation. It allows your direct report to prepare. It helps them with narrative, point of view, story building, being able to tell a streamlined story in a really quick amount of time. It helps them with the other skills that they're gonna need when they're managers, but it also helps shepherd those skills that they're gonna need to know at the next level, right? Like insight, narrative, clarity, building a story. And like, my direct report, they get so creative. Like sometimes they send me a TikTok before the meeting, like, did you watch the TikTok? Okay, so here's where I'm like, okay. And it just makes that experience more dynamic. The other one is getting a head start. So we know, we're all strategists, we can convince ourselves that anything is right. Management time is such a great way to test something that you're working on and invite someone else into that process as well. So sometimes I'm like, where are your ideas about where I should go? Or maybe I shared a pre-idea for a pitch. And I'm like, are you following? And they're like, it kind of lost me right about here. That's so meaningful, right? Like, that's meaningful to the other person. You're learning about how to refine your process. All of it is great. So it's a great way to also maximize that meeting time. Instead of saying, how's your day? Just say, hey, could you test this for me? Here's what my spiel is for the first 10. Tell me where it has breakdowns or where I could better support it. And this one is so personal to me and recent. It's also a way to curb your habits. I think one of the ways that we neglect management time is to actually use it to refine us and make us better. And one of the great examples that I got recently, I was like, what's one of those things, like, what's that I can be doing better? And she was like, honestly, that little sandwich feedback method that you do, I don't know what to do with that. Like, you're like, you look really great, and I didn't really like the way you left that comment in the meeting, but I like your shoes. It's like, what do you want me to address? And I think all of us are familiar with that sandwich method. And so what I did is I started to learn other feedback methods, and I started to use the AIID method, which is action, impact, involve, desired outcome. And the action would be like, hey, I saw that you weren't paying attention in the meeting. And the impact is the client feels like you're not engaged in the work. But the third step is the most important, involve. So I'm like, hey, what did you think about that? And they were like, actually, I was paying attention to the meeting. I was taking notes. But because I guess I was looking away from my screen, it made it appear that I wasn't. And sometimes it gets dissolved right there. Other times, you'll have like a narrative question. And like, hey, the narrative was clunky and unclear. The creatives couldn't follow the brief. Involve, how would you like me to help you in that situation? And they'll say, could you give me examples of like clearer narratives that I can use and model and behave? And that helped to get to a desired outcome. So it was a way for me to curb my own habits and say, maybe I can be doing this a bit better. Like I said, the way I would like to wrap is like management only becomes a chore when it lacks clear objectives and purpose. But most importantly, in the theme of bravery, it requires us to be brave. I finally stopped at a point where everybody could ask some questions. That was my goal. So I'm done, but I want you guys to ask questions.
Have you encountered any situations where, you know, it really just wasn't a fit, and how did you kind of change that around, or?
Yeah, I think management is like, when we view it through the lens of like Savable, it's like, are we being honest and are we being kind, right? Like when I use the AID method, people know what the actions, you know, when I was giving the sandwich method, I wasn't being honest and I wasn't being kind because I didn't really address what the problem was, right? And that didn't help them. So then when they didn't make the progress that I was expecting from them, I blamed them. That's not on them, that's on me. When I applied the new method, which was like, I have to lead with your actions. I felt like you weren't paying attention into the meeting. The impact of that is that the client felt that you were disengaged, and now we're at a point where they don't want you on the account anymore, right? Like, but if I involve you in that, you can say, oh, I was taking notes the whole time. Or if I use the narrative method, I'm able to identify the action. I think part of the purpose of the management and really getting into it and really being clear is that like we could probably avoid a lot of mistakes and get to the point where people are manager if we were honest about what they need to do to improve and set those meeting times to really get to the root of the feedback. But like we demonstrated, most of that time we show up late, we barely get to the thing, we throw general feedback. When people don't perform, we hold them to the thing we never established. And like, is that fair? Probably not.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Got 4 minutes. Oh, I'm doing good.
More questions.
So at my old job, I actually was one of the people who managed up, and I did it so much that I managed my boss's schedule to make sure that he specifically had time for me. How would you suggest that in that situation, you would have preferred it to be brought up from the people who work under you? And
Yeah.
what ways would you have wanted them to get your attention more, to be like, can I not do your job for you?
Yeah, 100%. And that's part of the reason I can't stand that word managing up, because the regular word of that is communication and setting expectations and being clear and being honest. And one of the ways that I think when we do the first step, which is the manual of me, is let's make sure we have the same understanding of what are you expecting from me? How do you like to reach me? What's the best time to talk to me? And then be here's what's best for me as well. It's not enough for them to know how I work. I also need to be aware of how they work and how it's impacting them. And so my goal is always to kind of start with the manual of me and be not leave I'm a Gemini, you're a Virgo. That's not helpful, right? What's helpful is I process things in this type of way. If you say something to me, I can process it. My team, I have to email them first. They set the meeting, and they said, then we want to use the meeting to review questions from what I didn't get, because some of them have ADHD or they just process differently. But I need to know that about them before I say, hey, I briefed you. Why didn't you get started? It was that's not how I process information. You assume that's how I process information because I modeled it after myself. And so the goal there would be kind of to start with a manual of me and expectation of a way of working for both people. So you say, this is how you could get the best work out of me. How can I get the best management out of you? And that hopefully would avoid the misstep of the always feeling like you have to manage them, but no one knows the best way for you to work. It should be kind of balanced in an ideal setting. 2 minutes. Oh, I'm doing good.
Maybe I can speak up.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you for exploring the generational trauma of management and strategy. My question is, and I've always wondered this, so it's a little tangential, but creatives always work in duos, but we never do that in strategy. So do you think that might be a solution to this, to the managerial problem?
I think yes and no. One, because it takes two. We don't have it, we put briefs together, and we do visual decks, and it takes two people to really do art and copy. I think the problem is the things that we're rewarded for and prized for make us really good at our job, make us really bad managers, right? You go away and you come back with the answer. You write, it comes down like manna from heaven, and you're writing on a commandment, you're like, this is the brief. But that process, you've been rewarded for that process for 5-7 years. When you're managing someone, that idea of disappearing and coming back is not helpful. That idea of oh, how's the project going? And leaving, you've been trained in that way for so long, you've been rewarded in that way for so long, that it's you really struggle translating that mindset. Whereas if you say, I need to maximize the meeting time, I need to onboard my week, I need to invite you into the process more, tell me something that's interesting, tell me a new way to get to it, this, that, other. Now I'm training my own self to say, my process, it doesn't just involve me anymore. My process involves developing, involves factoring other people's opinions in before I get to a place. And I think when we can embrace that managerial role of saying it doesn't diminish our ability to deliver well, but we have to be able to develop our brains and our skills and our behaviors and our habits to develop others, then I think we're in a position where we can actually win.
I got one for you.
Oh, okay.
I do.
Yeah.
Can you remember the best feedback you ever got from your manager? And can you tell us about the best feedback you may have ever given to one of your staff?
Oh, okay. Best feedback I've ever got from a manager. Don't be afraid to admit when you don't have the right answer and when you don't know. I think sometimes we posture and we fake it. And it was actually more helpful to be I don't actually have the right answer for you, but I promise I'll get it. And that was the best feedback I got because it allowed me to kind of remember to be a human being and not having to lie. And then best feedback I think I've ever given is probably the same, right? Don't be afraid to tell me that you don't have the answer yet. As long as you tell me early enough where I can rectify the situation, sure. But don't feel like you have to come to me and present. You can come to me and collaborate and say, hey, This is like this is at 40%. Okay, great, I know what to do with that. I'm out of time.
All right. Thank you, thank you, thank you.